Welcome back. It's me, James Donnelly, your host, as always, at the Shadow Gallery. And tonight, we're continuing our four-part series of the four original Batman films in the Batman film franchise. Basically, the pre-Nolan films. So tonight, we're going to be discussing Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever. Now, this was a pretty radical shift all around for the series, for the franchise, because not only did they go with a new director, they went with a new star, and interestingly enough, they went with a new composer. That may not seem terribly relevant, but it kind of is. And basically a whole new look and feel to the franchise. And of course the addition of another major character. Okay, so basically Tim Burton still remained as a producer on this film, I believe, or co-producer. But he departed, and Joel Schumacher, who had previously directed films like The Lost Boys and The Lost Boys. I know there's Flatliners. Gosh, I can't really seem to remember too many of his films prior to that. They're Falling Down, a horrible, awful film. The Lost Boys has its moments. Flatliners also a film of moments, but overall pretty bad. Now I went to see this with hope, but with some skepticism, because the previous two had left kind of a bad taste in my mouth. But I was still a fan of the character, so I figured, what the hell, maybe this one will be good. They also changed Batman, Bruce Wayne, for the first time. We had a new actor in Val Kilmer, who is, he really for a while was, an actor's actor. Because of all the films that, he had done, graduating from Juilliard, but then, going on to do two of my favorite comedies from the 80s, Top Secret and Real Genius. But then foraying into more dramatic roles, films like, Thunderheart, The Doors, of course, probably certainly one of my favorite of his performances as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. So this was an actor that I really respected. At that time, I was just really not pro on Michael Keaton. Certainly after the Batman films, just the career-wise, he just seemed to make a number of not very good decisions. So I was just, interested to see him. Danny Elfman was no longer the composer. Elliot Goldenthal, very much kind of a gun-for-hire type of composer, opted not to keep any of the original score. The kind of Batman theme that Danny Elfman had really kind of created and has lasted has lasted until pretty much now. Although it has an instantly recognizable theme, but I like Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard's take on it more. I think it's more appropriate for the character. Anyway, so the film itself, so we have Val Kilmer, we have Nicole Kidman, who, in my opinion, has never looked more sexy than she did in this film. Who plays the quote-unquote love interest of Dr. Chase Meridian. She's a psychiatrist. And she seems to be kind of obsessed with Batman, which is kind of why she came to Gotham City. She finds him a very fascinating case, but she also is fascinated with the first villain that we meet, which is Two-Face. Which played by Tommy Lee Jones, with some of the biggest scenery chewing that I've ever seen in a film. Um, there's no grand introduction to the character as far as, okay, well, he was the district attorney before, and now he has become Two-Face. Why? The film is lit much differently. Instead of it being a consistent darkness, there's a lot more light and heat to it. There's a lot more neon, because that's a Joel Schumacher thing, apparently. It's not terribly it's not terribly present in this film, but it's definitely there. And eventually you have a ridiculous kind of Batman saving the day, but not capturing Two-Face, but saving the hostages, in which he uses a poor guy's hearing aid to basically to crack a safe. And anyway, also present here we have Jim Carrey, who I hate, playing the Riddler, playing Edward Nygma, and his whole spiel of that he is using this contraption that he's created. He actually works in Wayne Enterprises, but he invents this thing that has an interesting side effect. Apparently it sucks brain waves out of other people, which he does to his boss after his project is shut down by Bruce Wayne. So therefore he has something against Bruce Wayne, and through this whole, of course, becomes obsessed with puzzles and riddles, the stupidest riddles like on the face of the planet also. And then, of course, there's a circus, and we meet the Flying Graysons. We've got Dick and his mother, his father, and his brother. There's no brother in the comic. He's played by Chris O'Donnell, who is absolutely 100% not up to the task of playing someone as iconic as Robin. It's just, he's not good. But, he's a good-looking young man, who apparently for some reason has, and it's explained in the film, but the explanation is so stupid that he has, he drives a motorcycle and everything like that, and of course he's got a huge chip on his shoulder because Two-Face has essentially killed his whole family, and it just, it gets more absurd. But the differences that we have here is that that basically they cast aside the previous two films in favor of doing something more cartoony. But with that cartoony also came something that I enjoyed a great deal, which was a much more dynamic Batman. Batman was not just he wasn't just RoboCop like, a Rock'em Sock'em Robot like Michael Keaton was. He did these amazing flips and dives and kicks and punches. I mean, he was very acrobatic. He was, he seemed to be a good martial artist. He had a good use of his gadgets, although some of them obviously, really, really skirt the edge of, well, I mean, all of them are pretty much unbelievable. No real grounding in the real world. And you have that pretty much from the first scene out. All of Two-Face's henchmen are all kind of garbed up in this, this almost kind of S&M garb. And he's got his two gals that, you know, each one of them represents a side of him. You know, one of them's, you know, kind of chaste and kind of innocent seeming, and that's Drew Barrymore, and then the other one's Debbie Mazar, who's kind of, you know, dark and, you know, ugly. Not ugly, but I mean, she, you know, she's just So from a writing standpoint, act to act to act, this is a more solid film than either of the two Batman films preceding it. It's one of the few that I can watch on repeated viewings, and I definitely skip scenes, but I can enjoy some of them. And yes, of course, we introduce the bat nipples, and the bat thong gets introduced in this film as well. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Nobody can understand why something like that would be added on to the suit. It makes no sense that they have nipples and you know, thongs, and they're very, very lovingly shot. You get the feeling that there's something. What's the word? That maybe Joel Schumacher was trying to go for something a little subversive with these films, that he was trying to underscore a message. And then, of course, you know, you have the final confrontation between Batman, and then once, you know, Dick, essentially, he becomes Robin, you know, and gets, you know, an awful-looking costume. Basically, it's just a knockoff of Batman's, except it's just got a domino mask as opposed to Batman's full head shield, or full cowl, I should say. Head shield. What the fuck am I thinking? You know, and basically Chase, you know, Nicole Kidman's there to kind of give the impression, okay, well, you know, now that we have these two men together in this partnership, and since the 50s, since Frederick Wortham said that, you know, they are the ideal homosexual couple, well, let's make sure that we have a really sexy love interest for both Batman and Bruce Wayne, so that you know, it will have the semblance of being a, you know, completely platonic hetero relationship between Bruce and Dick. They try to avoid using Dick's first name as much as is possible, which I think was a good choice. You know, Alfred calls him Master Grayson. Sometimes I think one or two times calls him Master Dick. But you know, even in the interaction between Bruce and Dick, Bruce doesn't really address him by his first name. You know, and then, you know, there are so many moments that defy logic or reason, but like I said, part by part, if you take the film apart, act by act, it actually is more coherent, just from a storytelling standpoint, than any of the previous films. Batman is not an out-and-out murderer in this film. I would hesitate to say that maybe he's responsible for the death of Two-Face at the end. But they do leave, of course, you know, the Riddler alive. You know, one would assume maybe to bring back for future installations of the franchise, which they're not doing, at least not yet. Or the Riddler's not a character in Nolan's arena, so, you know. Anyway, like I said, it's not a great film. It's not even necessarily a good film. But, like I said, from a structure standpoint, it's better. And the cartoonish element that it brings makes for a more enjoyable experience. It's not nearly as dour as the previous two films. And that's what makes this film better than either two films preceding it. So, that's it for Batman Forever. I'm sure you're going to stay tuned, because I'm sure you're very interested to hear my thoughts on Batman and Robin. They will surprise you. So until then, This is the Shadow Gallery saying good night.